Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to set up your Lumix S5 Mark II camera, helping you to get the most out of this budget-friendly but super powerful beast. In this tutorial, I hope to guide you through the best settings for the Lumix S5 Mark II when you very first get the camera in your hands, as well as all the physical buttons and what they all mean. Essentially, if you're like me coming over from a Sony camera system over to the Lumix, it can be a little daunting when you very first get the camera in your hands whilst trying to figure everything out. So this video is hopefully here to help you save time and get more creative with your videos. The chapters are down below. Let's go. Let's start by looking at the physical buttons on the Lumix S5 Mark II camera. On top of the camera, you will find the power button as well as the mode dial, the shutter button, aperture, white balance, ISO sensitivity, the exposure compensation, as well as the dial operation here for selecting photo modes, and the record button and shutter. On the back of the camera, you will be able to find the playback button, as well as the menu button, the joystick, the AF on, and the quick menu. These buttons are essential for navigating through the camera settings, so it's really important to know where they are and what they do. And on the front, you have this customizable button right here, super useful for a lot of reasons. If you press and hold it down, it'll come up with some menu options where you can quickly and easily customize it and use it to have easy access to a bunch of different settings, including, as you can see here, the level gauge, the histogram, the frame marker, photo grid lines. And if you want to, you can delve much deeper into the menu settings on the left side here, where you can look at the image stabilizations, the audio settings, the record quality, as well as zebra patterns, plus white balance, ISO sensitivity. The list goes on and on. You also have something here called the operational lock, which is quite useful when you want to essentially lock all the buttons on the camera whilst you're recording to stop any accidental changes in the shutter speed or ISOs or anything else like that. So when you hit record, there is no way of changing any settings. So this little button here is very useful for a lot of reasons. It is my main go-to button to assign the additional button that I need for that shoot, for that day, for that moment in time, whether it is the level gauge, whether it is the operational lock. I like to assign it specifically to this button. Now let's take a look at the best menu settings when you very first get your hands on the S5 Mark II. First up, you're going to want to switch the mode dial into movie mode. This is going to change the menu into the video mode and give you a few different settings than you were if you were in photo mode or S&Q mode. Personally, I would recommend using the manual exposure to allow you to get the best results out of this camera creatively if you know how to use the exposure triangle. That is the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO. So click on the exposure mode. There you've got a few options. You have P, A, S, and M. Choose M for manual mode. Then you have the EVF sensor, which is directly above the eyepiece. And as you can see, when I wave my hand over the sensor, the monitor cuts out and it can be quite annoying. For myself, I am a hybrid shooter and I do like to use the EVF. When I'm taking photos or when I'm reviewing the footage that I've shot, I like to use the EVF. So I do like to have it on. But if you don't, you can easily switch that off by using the LVF button, which is right next to the eyepiece. There you can toggle through just the EVF, just the monitor, or have the automatic sensor mode turned on. As I said, I do personally like to have the EVF on, but the sensitivity can be quite strong. So I like to reduce that sensitivity from high to low. You can do that in the settings by going into the menu and changing the sensitivity to low. And then next is making sure that you know you're recording when you're recording. You can turn on the red tally light, that is a red square around the monitor, as a more helpful and useful indicator to know that you're actually recording. The worst thing that can happen is that you press record, or at least you think you press record, and you miss the shot that you really wanted to get. I've done this before, and I'm sure you guys have as well, so having a red tally light is greatly welcomed. The camera does have a dual card slot, so depending on your workflow, you can choose how you want to record it. So go to the spanner icon and then the top tab for the card and file, and then go down to double card slot function. You've got 3 different methods here. You have relay mode, which will automatically switch from slot 1 to slot 2 once the card is full. Then you have backup recording, which means it will record the same footage onto both memory cards at the same time. I've been in the situation where my memory card has been corrupt and I've lost the most important files that I've needed for that day. Never a good place to be in. So having this function and having the ability to record the same footage onto 2 memory cards can be an absolute lifesaver. And then we have allocate recorder. Here you can choose which memory card you are shooting video to and which you are shooting photos to. Really helps to keep yourself organized if you're on a shoot which has both photos and video, and it can really help you when you get into the edit. So now let's look at the video settings. It's the first tab with the camera icon, and then go into the picture profile. If you want to get the best out of this camera, then I would absolutely recommend to shoot in Vlog picture profile. But I would first learn how to edit Vlog in the color grading department. But if you are new to all this, then I would recommend just shooting in the standard picture profile, and then you can simply tweak a few colors here and there in post-production and still get some really good footage out of this camera. And also, for a little bit more advanced and fancy, you can import your own LUTs into this camera and bake those LUTs into the footage already for a quicker edit workflow. And baking those LUTs into the footage simply means what you shoot is what you get. But for this, you will need to transfer a pre-existing LUTs file into your memory card and then transfer it over to the S5 Mark II via the menu settings here. Then click on the real-time LUT in the picture profile, and then click this button here. It should give you a list of all the LUTs available and should hopefully detect the LUTs that you have imported. Then we should go down to image format and change the record file format from MP4 to MOV. MOV will give you the best possible quality and more information for the edit. Then you have the image area of video. There you will have pixel to pixel or APS-C. This is when you are using APS-C sensors on this camera. And because the S5 Mark II is a full frame camera, the camera does need to compensate and crop in and allow you to use the APS-C sensors on this camera. This does mean, however, that if you are using something like a 35mm lens, it will convert it and change it to something more like a 46 or 50mm lens after it's been cropped in. And with the record quality, you have a lot of options out there. Just to be aware of the codecs, as 422 allows you to shoot more information than a codecs with 420. For example, the 6K open gate only shoots at 420 10-bit, which is technically less information than shooting with something like the 4K 422 10-bit. But honestly, for me, the 6K was such a big game changer, and one of the main reasons why I looked at this camera. And with the fact that most of my output is aimed more towards social media, so shooting with the 420, I am still getting enough flexibility there for the post-production, especially when most of my work is for social media anyways. And I love that Lumix have done this, and it's these little things that I think make Lumix so popular with their users these days. You can press the display button here and it brings up a filtering system so you can search specifically for the frame rate or resolution or codecs, and it will give you all the available options just for that specific choice. I absolutely love that. And now we're going to move on to the game changer for this camera, and that is the autofocus. We have a few options here for the physical buttons as well as in the menu settings. With the physical buttons, you can press the autofocus mode button and it'll bring up a few options for you. And then if you look at the top, we have single focus, continual focus, and manual focus. When you're shooting video, it's best to keep it on continual focus to allow you to keep track of that moving subject. In the menu settings, go to the camera tab and then the focus tab. Here, you're going to want to make sure that the AF detection setting is on. Detection setting is both human and animal. That seems to be the best autofocus mode for me so far. Then you're going to want to go to the second tab with the cog and go to the AF tab and then make sure that the eye detection display is on. That'll show you a box with a cross on the eye so you know that it's always in focus. And when it comes to shooting manual, as all cameras do, we have the focus peaking. This can be found in the camera tab, and then focus tab, and then focus peaking. Turn it on and then go into set. Click that and then you have a few more options for how you want the peaking to be. I personally like to have the peaking color in red, and I like to have the sensitivity a little bit higher at +1. But you can also change the color to various different colors depending on what you're shooting to keep that focus peaking visible. For example, if you're shooting with a model with a red dress, you're not exactly going to want a peaking color in red, because you're not really going to be able to see whether the subject is in focus or not. So if you're in that kind of situation, you can change that color to something like a yellow or a green, and it becomes much more visible. And now we have image stabilization, something for me which I think is really good in this camera. For this, you're going to want to go into the camera tab again, and then go down to the bottom to other tab. And here we have image stabilizer. You have 3 stages of stabilization with the S5 Mark II. We have the normal stabilization, which helps to reduce the handshake just a little. And then we have E-stabilization, which is another level of stabilization on top of that. And then we have Boost IS, which is super powerful for static shots and keeps the image deadly stable if you're not moving the camera. It's there to help emulate the feel of a tripod if you don't have a tripod to hand. But using the Boost IS on a run and gun style of shot isn't the most ideal, because you're going to get some weird warping and jolly effects around the edges and within the image, because the camera is trying to do something which it's not intended to do. That is it for this tutorial on setting up the Lumix S5 Mark II when you very first get the camera in your hands. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and informative. And by following these steps, you can save time and get more creative with your videos. Remember to experiment with these different settings and try and figure out what works best for you. At the end of the day, we're all individual photographers and filmmakers who have very specific needs and wants. So try and figure out what works best for you. If you have any questions or comments, or even if you have any better suggestions in regards to the menu settings on this camera, leave the comments down below. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.